Story 1. Sleep. Uninterrupted, delicious. Accidentally napped for 4 hours on a Saturday and nobody died kind of sleep. The kind where your biggest concern was whether to get Thai food or pizza afterward, not whether a tiny human is using your toothbrush as a drumstick. Story 2. Nobody regularly learned from me. Children can be very non-judgmental, but sometimes I need to realize that someone is watching me and learning all the time. Story 3. Spontaneity. Gone are the days when we could check out a new restaurant on a whim, plan a weekend away, decide to rearrange furniture, or go for an unplanned walk together. Even laundry is routine now. Everything has to be planned in advance. I hate losing my impulsivity, but things are definitely getting easier as they get older. Story 4. Simply being free from the responsibility of being a parent is always a constant presence nearby. Story 5. Sex anytime. Now we have to wait for them to fall asleep or sneak off to our room while they watch a television show. Honestly, we are pretty good at making time for each other, but the convenience of being intimate whenever and wherever is missed. Story 6. It is no secret and nothing I am ashamed of. I miss sleep and I miss making plans on a whim. We are lucky to have some good babysitters around for a date night, but I miss just grabbing a drink with my husband for an hour or even getting a forgotten grocery item without it being a production. Story 7. My children are teenagers now, and we can leave them home alone to grab lunch or watch a movie. Truly is bliss. Time together and time on my own is what I missed when they were younger. Story 8. Suddenly, I have no time for myself, hobbies, or relationships. Everything revolves around the child to the point where, just to get some time alone, I sacrifice sleep. The child goes to sleep later and later, so the few precious hours I have to catch up on everything that gets pushed aside to be with the child get compressed into that window. I go to bed later and later, but wake-up time remains the same because there is school the next day. Suddenly, I am washing dishes and folding laundry at 11 p.m. Story 9. Planning vacations and trips in off-peak seasons. Places are usually less crowded, and you can enjoy luxurious experiences at a lower price. However, once children start school, you have to wait until their vacations before you can travel. It is more expensive and always crowded during that time. Story 10. Not being needed. Just a few minutes where I don't have to be an employee, wife, homemaker, or mother. Just 15 minutes before work in the morning, slowly sipping a cup of hot coffee in silence before starting my day. It's getting better now that my son is 4 and more independent, and I'm not needed all the time just to keep him alive every moment. However, the coffee is rarely hot or finished. Story 11. I miss not always having a tiny seed of worry in the pit of my stomach whenever they go to school or a public place. I love them deeply and would not give them up for anything, but I do not think I have known a moment of true, worry-free peace since my first daughter was born. Story 12. Not having to deliver a convincing and spectacular discussion and argument just to get a small child to do a basic task is a relief. Being a manager was much better because adults listen much faster than children. Also, sleeping when I want and being a night owl was a benefit. Now I am up at 7:30 to feed the aforementioned small children breakfast. Story 13. I am a very non-confrontational person. Having children has basically forced me to be confrontational, and I dread it. Even though I know I would never be aggressive, people are very touchy. I miss not having to stick up for myself, but I have to advocate for my children and teach them how to advocate for themselves. Story 14. Doing nothing for however long I want. Now, I have between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. to do nothing, and even then, my partner prefers that I be doing something. Story 15. The lack of anxiety that one of my children will die. Honestly, everything else that I miss, like leaving the house without telling anyone I will be back to doing faster than I think. For the days may be long, but the years are short. Story 16. Money. My kids are grown, so the baby and little kid stuff is a distant memory. I estimate that we spent over $160,000 on daycare alone. We live in Chicagoland. When my oldest was about 3 or 4 years old in the early 2000s, daycare cost more than tuition at several area colleges and universities at that time. Now our 19-year-old is in college, and that costs as much as a second house payment. Story 17. waking up slowly, on my own time, opening your eyes and being able to remember and think about the dream you just had. Now I hit the ground running, usually to my kids screaming at each other. I am not a morning person and my kids like to wake up at 5:30. They were awake at 4:40 yesterday morning. Story 18. I love my children and do not regret becoming a parent one bit. What I miss the most is being able to do one thing uninterrupted for 30 minutes. I cannot sit and focus on one singular task ever again, it seems. Story 19. I have a 12-year-old boy. I am the father. I miss my wife's food leftovers and meal leftovers. My little boy now consumes almost all of it. Story 20. When I wanted to go somewhere, I could just leave, get in my car, and go. Now I have to inform my children before I leave as I am a single mother, or I have to wait for them to come with me, or I have to ask them to get in the car because we are home buddies. I know it seems silly, but it was something I seriously took for granted. Story 21. Being able to use the restroom without someone knocking on the door repeatedly, asking what I am doing in there and why I locked the door. Story 22. I miss being able to have a non-workday sloth fest, sleep in, lounge about in my sweatpants on the couch, watch a movie or play video games, order junk food, maybe go for a walk, have a long bath and take a nap in the afternoon. I'm lucky that my kids, 3-year-old female and 1-year-old male, sleep well, but they like to get up early, earlier than I want to. During the week, we get the kids up just before 7 o'clock, and on the weekends, we might get another half hour out of them. Occasionally, they'll sleep until 8 o'clock on a weekend day. Once they're up, though, there's no sloth allowed. We have to feed them, dress them, clean them, entertain and exercise them, feed them some more, and so on. Feels like you're busy all day, and it's not restful. Once they go to bed, we reset the house and usually go to bed ourselves. Story 23. Sex and good food. Before children, we used to use our entertainment budget on eating at nice places and enjoying good food and drink. Now, we use it for other things. We are also too tired to keep up with the sex life that led us to having children, which is disappointing but hopefully improving as the children become less needy as they grow. Story 24. Just cooking whatever I feel like eating for dinner without having to consider if others will eat it. Story 25. It is not a secret, but sleep. Sleeping in, napping, and staying up late because I know I can make up the sleep tomorrow. Story 26. Less stress. When my son was born, it felt like my heart left my body and started living its own life. My son is 17, and I do not have much say in how he lives his life. It is just very stressful. Story 27. Being able to do what I want immediately. I cannot do that when I have to arrange a babysitter. Story 28. I miss my freedom to just get up and go do whatever I want. Play a game all day long, go out to dinner on a whim, or enjoy leisurely sex. Story 29. Binge watching a show in peace on a Sunday morning. Now I am lucky if I get through one show before I am interrupted or fall asleep. Story 30. Not one thing. My children are grown and I did a good job. I would not change 1 second. Story 31. Just having the freedom to come and go as I please without having to consider anyone else was important. Finding good babysitters was a complete nightmare for us because we did not have any family support. I felt resentful about this since I was regularly left at my grandparents' house as a child. Travel was also difficult because it is incredibly expensive to be limited to school holidays. However, you get your life back when the children are 11 or 12 and can be left at home for a while. Teenagers require little supervision. Story 32. Being able to spend money indiscriminately. Spontaneity, but also just having tougher skin. Having a child made me much more sensitive. I cannot watch or read anything about children being harmed, or I will become a blubbering mess for the rest of the day. I am tearing up just thinking about it right now. Story 33. I miss being out after 8 with my husband doing unimportant things. It is hard to justify the cost of a babysitter for a friend's boyfriend's birthday, so one of us goes while the other stays home. Story 34. Hobbies. I come home from work, feed the baby, cook, wash dishes, shower, get the baby ready for bed, and feed again. By the time we are done with all that, it is 9 to 10 p.m. rinse and repeat. Weekends are the only time we might have a little downtime, as long as we have no plans with anyone, but that rarely happens. It is usually a rush to complete typical household tasks. Laundry, food shopping, yard work, and cleaning, all before we have to go out or have people over. Anything else, like getting clothes, a Home Depot run, Costco runs, and so on, is crammed in somewhere. Story 35. Starving when I do not feel like cooking or grocery shopping would be considered neglect if I did it now. Story 36. Alone time and spontaneity. I miss being able to go for walks by myself. I was a lot more fit for it, or impromptu hikes with friends. I miss being able to sit in silence for 4 hours, or just getting off work and seeing where the night takes me. The memories of that lifestyle are quite fond, and I know I will be able to enjoy going with the flow again someday. But sometimes I would really like to enjoy those privileges now while I am still relatively young. My children are worth the sacrifice, though. Two things can be true at the same time. Errands are also about 7 times faster when you can go alone. Story 37. Before children, my wife and I both worked in downtown Philadelphia. After work, we could get drinks, have dinner, and attend a baseball or hockey game. It was nice. Story 38. I really miss being able to go out on a Saturday night, get drunk, and do karaoke without having to plan ahead for a babysitter, which is hard at the moment. Story 39. Traveling. I am divorced and pay child support in an HCL area. I make decent money but have not been able to afford a real vacation in years. Something always comes up. My ex, however, has gone on multiple trips per year. Story 40. Not having my thought process or a task interrupted. Lazy weekends. Having money. Spontaneity. Not having to find family-friendly facilities at any holiday destination. When they were little, sleep. Not having to worry constantly about their nutrition, screen time, education. Eating out at fancy restaurants. Reading several books a year instead of struggling to find time to read even one. Not constantly tidying up their mess. My career prospects. Story 41. I sometimes really miss quiet time. After a long day at work, I just want quiet time, but my children want to talk, which I love and encourage. Sometimes it makes me feel overstimulated. Story 42. Not having to constantly worry about what strangers think of me if they happen to see me and my child in public. Story 43. Freedom and lack of responsibility, and absolutely no sleep. My toddler wakes up at 6 o'clock almost every day, 6:30 at the absolute latest. Story 44. Mine is 12 now, so it no longer applies, but when he was little, I really missed sleeping in on the weekend. Story 45. When my children were babies and toddlers, I missed a lot more. I was more aware of what my life was like before I had them. Now that my children are older, I do not think about this at all anymore. I do not really miss anything, maybe some full free days of just painting and similar activities. But now that my children are both in school, I have more time to myself. Maybe about 3 days free just for myself at home in my own space. Story 46. Knowing I had a way out and nothing could stop me if I just did not want to live anymore. Now I owe it to them to not die. Story 47. Honestly, I feel like I could just stop whatever I am doing and be intimate with my husband. I feel psychologically unable to be a sexual person while my children are awake in the house. If they are asleep, I can be intimate with my husband, but I cannot allow myself to be touched sexually unless they are out of the house, spending the night at grandma's or somewhere else. That is the only time I can stop being a mom and start being a lover again. And I cherish that one night a week. I hope that when they are older, I will reclaim my sexuality, but until then, my pleasure is only considered by me on date nights. My husband always wants to touch me, so it is difficult. This is the hardest part of our marriage. Everything else is wonderful. Story 48. Being lazy and making spontaneous plans. I remember when I could lie in bed for hours doing nothing, but now that is impossible unless I send my children to my sister's house. I miss when my sisters or partner would text me at 10 or 11 p.m. to ask if I wanted to go do something right away. Random late-night adventures are something I miss so much. Story 49. Being able to go out and do something alone for a few hours without feeling like a neglectful or selfish person. I would love to go for a hike alone even just once or twice a year, but I feel too guilty. Story 50. Freedom and spontaneity. It was nice to be able to do whatever we wanted and make spur-of-the-moment decisions. Story 51. Being able to read a sentence only once and fully comprehend it. Seriously, can't you just be quiet long enough for me to read these 6 words? Fine, I will come play with you and do it later. Story 52. Sleep. Not having to be responsible for everything. I don't mean their lives, but man, it is always on me. Bring water, jackets, extra anything, snacks. And that's just leaving the house or leaving an event or outing. Do we have everything? We went to a park on Easter Sunday. After spending an hour there, I walked to the car to get water for one child. On my way back, I noticed everyone, the father, 2 preteens, and a baby, coming toward me. I said, "There's no water. Let's just go home and finish the day there." We got home, and I didn't even realize they left the diaper bag. But somehow, it was my responsibility to make sure they had everything. By they, I mean the father, the other parent. We had to replace everything because by the time I realized it wasn't in the house, car, or garage, it was long gone. Story 53. The thing I miss is not having to worry about someone else's safety. The fact that it's a child, my child, amplifies the worry immensely. Every day I'm explaining to my child why and how something can be dangerous if she touches or does it. Or if it's something we see on television and she says, "Mom, I want to do that." I have to say no because it could be harmful. But she's my best friend. My life was difficult without her. I would never go back even if I could. Story 54. Not worrying all the time. No one tells you that when you have children, it is like giving birth to your own heart in a world full of sharks. Every pain they feel, you will feel. You not only have to worry about how society will perceive and receive them, but you also have to worry about how they will perceive and receive society. You worry about how they will be treated. You also worry about how they will grow up to treat people. You worry that society will treat them monstrously and that they could potentially grow up to be monsters. Story 55. I miss being able to just turn my mind off. Now my thoughts are constantly consumed by keeping track of my children and anticipating their needs. I am always planning and preparing for every scenario because you never know what they will throw at you. Story 56. I miss most of all the things already mentioned, but I specifically miss playing video games for a whole afternoon. It has been too long since I played, and I need a long time to catch up with the story or quests again. I don't have that luxury. My free time is used for being with my partner, answering texts, or maybe watching some TV or having some food in silence. That is if there is nothing to clean up or do around the house. I would love to spend a whole day playing without guilt. Story 57. Being able to walk from point A to point B without bumping into, stepping on, being held back, or having to dodge anyone or anything. Story 58. Definitely time. We do not have any support, so it is just me and my husband trying to manage. We have reached a level of burnout that I never knew was humanly possible. I also know that we will miss them being this young, but it is hard work. Story 59. Most people, I'm sure, will say sleep. For me, it's just having the ability to do things and take care of tasks whenever they need to be done. You can drop what you're doing and get things done without worrying about multiple children in tow or finding arrangements to have people help watch them. Story 60. Sometimes I think about how well we would be financially if we did not have kids. If I could live in a studio and drive a small car instead of a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, I would feel like Jeff Bezos. Story 61. I had my eldest when I was 17, so I did not experience much of adult life before becoming a parent. However, I miss just being boyfriend and girlfriend with my partner. I know our time will come when the children are grown up and have lives of their own. Story 62. You know when you quickly want to buy one single item in the nearest shop? Before children, that took me 7 minutes at most. I got in the car, drove to the store, grabbed the item, bought it, went back to my car, and drove home. Now, it takes 10 minutes just to get out of the house. Sometimes we don't even make it to the car because my daughter realizes she needs to pee. Then we have to take her jacket off, which takes another 10 minutes. She always gets distracted on her way to the car. I have to buckle her up and then get in the car myself. 22 minutes later, I arrive at the store. She wants her own cart, and it's easier to go along than to risk another tantrum. I have to pick my battles. She decides she wants to buy all the fruit. I have to tell her she can pick 2 or 3 kinds because she won't eat all of it and it will just rot away eventually. Anyway, I return home 35 minutes later if I'm lucky. Everything takes at least 3 times more time. Story 63. Sleep. They have grown up, but restful sleep never returned. Also, my health has been affected. I have lifelong complications from my first pregnancy. Story 64. Sleep. The peacefulness of quiet. Not having to follow a strict schedule. Not having to prepare 300 meals a week. Story 65. Having sex when the mood strikes in my own house at any time of day without having to be quiet or lock the bedroom door. Story 66. Lying in bed and going back to sleep on a cold morning. Now I get jumped on, physically pushed out of the bed, and told, "Lights on time. It's time to wake up, mommy." At 5:50 a.m., rain, hail, or shine. Story 67. Sleep. Hot coffee. Leisurely weekends. Mornings to myself before work. I could do what I wanted after work. If I was sick, I could lie in bed. Story 68. Only having to worry about feeding myself whatever and whenever I want. The endless questions about what to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner when I would be fine eating raw vegetables or popcorn. Story 69. My own time. Just the ability to sleep, shower, and use the bathroom whenever I want, uninterrupted. Never mind the big stuff like exercise and hobbies. Story 70. Doing things that I actually enjoy. A fun day before children would consist of going to the mall, treating myself to some clothes or makeup, buying dinner, having a few drinks, and watching my show before going to bed. I am now a full-time stay-at-home mom, and my life revolves around my daughter. There are no trips to the mall, no treating myself unless it is an iced coffee, very rarely eating out, and by the time she sleeps, I am usually too exhausted to even watch my shows. My daughter is 100% worth it, though. I will get my time back one day when she is grown. It is so hard, though, how selfless you have to be as a parent. Story 71. I rush home because I want to see my child before bedtime. I used to be able to just see a friend after work and chat. Story 72. The silence. Just being able to sit in total quiet and hear nothing but your own thoughts. Feels different once it is gone. Story 73. Switching off mentally. You never really get to completely zone out. One part of the brain is always saying, "Have you got school uniforms ready for tomorrow? Do you have enough food in the fridge for lunches? You need to start dinner. Have they done their homework?" Story 74. Being able to do things on a whim, such as going to the pub for dinner on a weeknight, seeing a movie, or meeting a friend for brunch. I miss cleaning the house and having it stay clean for a few days. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.